Welcome to our special council meeting today, January 28th, 2026. We're going to call the meeting to order, and I'll pass it to Clementine for a roll call and other announcements with the public.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Rash.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
And Mayor Williamson.
Here.
And public comment and participation information is provided on this meeting's agenda, which is online at monterey.gov/agendas. In-person attendees, please keep your electronic devices muted to prevent audio interference. Consistent with the First Amendment and the Brown Act, individuals have the right to speak at public meetings, which includes the right to criticize or support city policies or actions. The city encourages your uninhibited and robust feedback on public issues affecting the city. Thank you for participating.
Thanks, Clementine. With that, we'll take public comments from folks on closed session items. For everybody's awareness, there's nobody in the chamber. There's no public members in the chamber. So for folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. What we do is we identify the folks at the beginning of the public comment period. Once those folks are identified, we close it off, and then only those folks will be able to speak. So I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 2 folks, so we'll go ahead and take those callers.
Yes, first calling on Tom.
Thank you. I have a general public comment, and I don't know if I think this is the appropriate time to have a general public comment.
No, sir. We'll get to that after our closed session.
Well, I want to comment on that. I want to suggest that you hold the closed session at the end of the agenda.
So no, I'm sorry. This isn't the time to provide public comment on process or anything other than the item that's on the closed session agenda. So it's and I usually read it, so I apologize for not reading it. It's conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to government code section 54956 TAC 9D2 E1, and it's one case. So if the public comment isn't on that, this is not the time for it. Did you have anything else, Tom, at this time?
No, I think that's not a good policy, but.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and take our next caller.
This one is Lori.
Well, I had kind of the same thing, and I'm just going to say, I know it sounds like now we speak during a different public comment time, but my comment is.
I'm sorry.
But what I need to know is it's not on the agenda. I don't see where we have general public comment, so nobody knows when to speak.
Lori, unfortunately, this isn't the time to provide those comments.
I understand, but I don't see it on the agenda when we do provide them. I don't see general public comment written in the agenda, so I don't know when to call in.
Lori, hold tight.
Lori, that's correct. You don't see it, and that's not required. When there's a special city council, general public comment is not a requirement under the Brown Act. So there need not be a time for general public comment at this meeting, and the agenda does not have that on the agenda. That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close public comment because there doesn't seem to be any public comment on the closed session item. And with that, we'll go ahead and recess to the closed session. Thank you, everybody. Welcome everybody to our special council meeting, January 20th, 2026. We already called the meeting to order. We just finished closed session. So we're reconvening here. But before we go into the agenda, I just want to do a few things. First of all, everybody will have their, so because this is a special council meeting, there's no general public comment like you would see on a regular council agenda. So there was some confusion when we were receiving some public comment on the closed session agenda items at the beginning of today's council meeting. So I just wanted to provide that clarity for everybody. If you're here to speak about one of the agendized items, there will be a public comment period for you to speak, but there is no general public comment because it is a special council meeting. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Clementine to share announcements with the public.
Public comment and participation information is provided on this meeting's agenda, which is online at monterey.gov/agendas. In-person attendees, please keep your electronic devices muted to prevent audio interference. Consistent with the First Amendment and the Brown Act, individuals have the right to speak at public meetings, which includes the right to criticize or support city policies or actions. The city encourages your uninhibited and robust feedback on public issues affecting the city. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Clementine. And with that, we're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Councilmember Rash to kick us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gene. And with that, we'll move on to announcements from closed session.
Council held a conference with legal counsel regarding significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2E1, one case, and no reportable action was taken.
Thank you, Nat. And with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. There's been a request to pull item 2 by a member of the public. Council, do you wish to pull anything else? Staff, have we heard anything else since that item? Anything else that needs to be pulled? I think we're good. Okay. So with that, we will take it out to the public. I'll just share again how you participate in public comments. What we do is we identify folks at the beginning of the public comment period. Once those folks are identified, we close it off, and then only those folks will be able to speak. So you have to identify yourself at the beginning in order to speak on the item. So I'll check in with folks on Zoom. You can use the raise hand function. While you're navigating your way there, I'll check with folks in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on consent items? Polling number 2. Anybody want to speak on consent outside of number 2? All right, we'll go ahead and cut it off in the chamber. We'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 1 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and take that caller.
You can go ahead and speak.
Yes, this is Nina Beatty. I'd like to comment on number 2. Is this the appropriate time?
Nope, we pulled it, so we'll have that item addressed separately. So with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council for motion and deliberation.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 3 on the consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, which was pulled from consent. It's to accept a grant funds from the State Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, authorized grant agreement for implementation of Monterey's citywide fuel reduction project, authorize an increase in FY27 and FY28 annual revenues by $475,000, appropriate grant funds, and appropriate match funds of $100,000. With that, I'll pass it to Lou for staff presentation.
Is available here today. Can't wait to address that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we had a new opportunity to apply for another CAL FIRE grant that was made available to us. So we were successful back in 2023 in acquiring the same amount, so $950,000 from CAL FIRE, with us providing $150,000 matching funds. And this time we applied for the same grant. The maximum was $950,000, which we got. And with $100,000 of our matching funds, which we can use with the NCIP money that we get for fuel reduction well. So we're able to make that NCIP money go that much further that we get through that program. So yeah, it's been very worthwhile. I don't know what you would like me to add, but otherwise that it's been very effective to help us make this money go further, to make our forests a little bit safer as we go through each area at a time. So we still have a lot of work to go, but we so far have done a lot of meaningful work, as hopefully you've been able to see out there.
Thank you, Tice.
Yep.
Any questions, please?
Yeah, thank you, Tice. That's a great use of the general fund money to trip four times the money.
Yep.
So couple questions. Do we know what the total amount in the fuel reduction coupled with the NCIP funding and any other general funds that we will be able to execute in FY 26-27? Total amount for fuel reduction.
Well, we'll definitely max out whatever is allocated to us through NCIP. I don't know how much we'll be able to go through from the CAL FIRE money because we still have some from the previous grant that we're still working through. And then obviously that's always kind of weather contingent on the conditions, on what our biological surveys tell us, what equipment we can use, what we can't use. So it depends on a lot of things. So when the weather is nice like this, we're like right now we had 2 projects that we're trying to work on. For example, try to take advantage of this nice weather. We're out of nesting season right now. So we try to take advantage of these type of conditions.
Okay.
Does that make
And the other part was I had a citizen ask if there's a way to view something on the website that tells them what projects have been accomplished and what projects you're looking at to execute in the fuel reduction. So in other words, a general map that maybe you have, targeted dates or targeted projects or,
Gotcha.
or as you make progress through the greatest exposed areas.
What's great is Pat's crew has been doing that for us. So we kind of keep them in the loop of what we're doing. And so Jen Valdez is in FIRE has been putting together a map of what we've been doing, with hand crews, with equipment. So we do have a map of what we've accomplished. And I think we in certain cases, depending on where we are, we have put some proposed projects on there too. I'm pretty certain. I can't try to picture the map in my head right now, but
I'm just wondering if the public has access to that on the website.
we brought that up. I know it was at the workshop that we had about a year ago. We put that out there, but yeah, we might have put that out before on like Monterey Matters. But yeah, we can talk about where we could put that out. That's more readily available to the public. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions at this time? All right. Thank you, Tice. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. So for folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function while you're navigating your way there. I'm checking in the chamber. Anybody in the chamber wish to speak on this item? I see a taker already. Anybody else? So we'll cut it off in the chamber to the 1. I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 2 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start in the chamber. Good to see you, Adam.
Good evening, Adam, on behalf of the Monterey County Association of Realtors. I'll keep this very brief. It's fantastic that we're getting these resources. It's a significant problem when fuel reduction and the ever increasing creep of fire hazard severity zones are effectively pricing residents out of their homes, particularly residents on fixed income or on disability, right? They may not have the resources necessary to be in compliance, but furthermore, that they're probably also facing some pretty significant increases to their insurance rates. So I would just ask that we could explore ways to, one, concentrate where strategically it makes sense. And I'm sure our fire department professionals can figure this out better than I can or any of us here. But if we can, to find a way to prioritize areas of residential neighborhoods that are particularly at risk. And if we can create any kind of buffer zones or breaks, and then if we can document that and make the documentation available to homeowners. It's not every time, but in some cases, homeowners can get reductions in their insurance rates if they can demonstrate that their risk has been reduced. So I would just plead that the city do what they can to help folks out. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to our callers on Zoom.
First, we have a telephone caller who can go ahead.
Good evening. This is Nina Beatty. CAL FIRE practices increase fire danger to Monterey, and I ask that you don't take this grant for this purpose because it will not reduce fire potential. CAL FIRE appears to lack forest expertise. They're taking timber and wood pellet industry harvest protocols and rebranding them as forest and fuel management, which is very dangerous for public safety. First of all, vegetation is not fuel. Vegetation is moisture creation, temperature reducing, wind slowing. Walk into a forest or put your hand even into a clump of dried grass and you can feel the temperature drop. The Pebble Beach fire happened in 1987, nearly 40 years ago. The reason? Dense, moist forests with substantial vegetation. But we can have annually recurring fires like they do in LA if that's what you want. Just keep stripping the vegetation and thinning the forest like CAL FIRE advises. CAL FIRE's practice has increased the most flammable vegetation, grasses and thistles, as Monterey is already finding. CAL FIRE practices increase wind access by thinning and limbing and creating roads. They decrease moisture, increase dryness. This makes winds drier and faster, like Santa Ana's. It increases erosion and harms the pine forest. Don't keep making the same mistakes. Learn from them. First of all, I've brought other fire issues that the city is not addressing. You need to ban smart meters. They are a fire ignition hazard on every building. Also ban flammable lithium-ion battery storage in Monterey. Allow rooftop sprinklers in high fire hazard zones. And this week again, planes were overhead discharging chaff and highly flammable aluminum into the air, which falls out, coating the leaves and land, and is uptaken by plants and trees. Rhode Island wrote a bill, H 5217, banning weather modification and geoengineering aerosols, saying environmental accumulation of combustible agents released in atmospheric experiments and or interventions threatens public health and safety with the potential to cause harm, desiccation of all biological life, contributing to drought and the hazard of catastrophic forest fires. Yet Monterey and Sacramento are silent, as the Navy here does weather modification and aerosol projects. In addition, MPS microwave radiation stresses trees and vegetation into emitting flammable terpenes, creating fire danger. The city is blaming the victim. That's very, very dangerous to real fire prevention. How about spending money on actual prevention? Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Esther.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to point out, I don't want Laguna Grande Park to kind of fall through the cracks when all this fire prevention money is out there, because we're going through this whole JPA process. So I'm not sure how that's distributed or separated out, but this JPA process that we're going through is taking way longer than it should. We originally had funds set aside for some trail maintenance that was supposed to happen behind residents' homes. That has been put on hold, and that is in an area where there have been homeless encampments, and that is the area right by the PG&E substation. And it is also where there is dense brush. So I would like to know what the plan is for that park regarding fire mitigation before this grant money gets distributed, so that I can make sure that our neighborhood is included in that. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Hoping staff might be able to respond to a few questions that came up during the public comment. Ms. Beatty spoke to, I might be misspeaking for her, but how I interpret it was that there is really no evidence that shows that fuel reduction supports reduction in fires. So not sure if staff could speak to that at all. And then Esther's point at the end in regards to the distribution of funds, as Laguna Grande incorporated into that.
Mayor, Council, either Ties or the fire chief can speak to ladder fuels and the standard practice of CAL FIRE in terms of fire mitigation activities.
Thank you. I would just say that we go by the guidance of CAL FIRE, of Monterey Fire, in terms of how we're prioritizing the areas that we see that need attention. So I don't know what to say other than, yeah, ladder fuels are what we're trying to get after here. So we're trying to keep a ground fire from getting into to turning into a crown fire. That's what, when it's a crown fire, our hands are almost tied behind our back. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly here, but it's a really tough thing to go. And Laguna Grande is different. We have the Monterey side has recently done a lot of work. We actually met Esther out there and some of the other folks at Laguna Grande that Monterey has done on our side. We're still waiting for Seaside to take some action. They do have some money set aside for grant work. They are working with CAL FIRE and the Gavilan crew, but they are running into some hurdles, if you will, or some roadblocks. So, but they will. We just had a staff meeting the other day that they're trying to get this off the ground for Seaside. So we're trying to help each other with getting these resources available to them so they can start this project. So, yeah.
Okay. Chief, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Good evening. So yeah, we do work a lot with CAL FIRE. They are the experts in this field, and along with Tice and his staff. Vegetation management is just one part of fire prevention. We do defensible space inspections. We also have early recognition cameras, and then the weight of our attack and its speed, it all plays a part of it. We actually have a report from 2025 that we'll be distributing shortly, showing all the work that we've been doing for defensible space inspections and vegetation management. So I understand it's very sensitive, but we do work with environmental constraints, with get those studies done, and then we work with CAL FIRE and the experts that know the best how to manage the vegetation. So that's how we deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Oh,
Yeah.
please, Jean.
Quick question for
Yeah.
the captain. Chief, would you talk about prioritization? And I'm sure this is extremely hard and every resident is valuable.
Right.
But I was having a conversation with the interim city manager
Yes.
and noting that how vulnerable is the hospital surrounded by so much forest.
Right.
And then the two nursing homes along Skyline.
Right.
And how do you evaluate that? What's the mechanism?
So we take the guys. So I'm sure you guys adopted the CAL FIRE severity zones, high fire severity zones. So we prioritize the highest severity zones first. As far as the hospital, I know we had some questions about it, and we did find that there's a lot of management that's already been done around it. Some of that is our property, some of it is not, but there is some management that is being vegetation management that's been done around the hospital to protect it. As far as the care facilities, we do inspections around that too, based on the severity of the zones, and we prioritize it that way. That's how we do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anybody else have questions while the chief is up here?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
All right. Well, it's back to the council for motion and deliberation.
Make a motion that we accept the grant funds from the State Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. Authorize the grant agreement for implementation of Monterey's citywide fuel reduction project. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. With that, we're going to move on to our public appearance item. Number 4 on the agenda is to receive a presentation on draft stormwater utility fee study results and authorize staff to initiate the process for fee adoption. That'll pass it to Lou for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This evening, we have 2 items, number 4 and 5, that are a continuation of the work that your council has been doing over the past several months to begin to identify a number of revenue sources to begin to close your structural budget gap. And item number 4 is related to stormwater utility fees. And this evening, we'll have your Deputy Public Works Director, City Engineer Andrew Easterling present this item. And following that, your Assistant City Manager and Finance Director will present a background on the budget deficit and the other items that your council's been considering.
Good evening, and thank you, Lou, for the introduction. Whoops, this is not on. Oh, thank you. All right, so good evening, members of the council. My name is Andrew Easterling, and I'm here to give a presentation on the draft stormwater utility fee study survey results. And this is also a request to provide guidance specifically to authorize staff to proceed with the fee approval process. So if I can, is there a way to make that full screen? No. If I can just set the stage of how we got here. Back in September, City Council had a meeting where you went through an exercise to look through different strategies to help address the structural deficit. There were a number of considerations, and one of those was to update the stormwater fee. This was an item that the council unanimously supported, 5 out of 5. There was 100% support for this item. And following that meeting, the council determined to move forward with this process. So since then, we've been busy trying to develop the fee study for the stormwater rates. And we've also, as a component of this work, have done a community survey to survey property owners and to get feedback on what their feelings are with the stormwater program and kind of gauge what public support looks like currently. We're the yellow star on that timeline. So that's, we're the first red star on that timeline. So this is a presentation on the survey results. Following this meeting, if council authorizes the staff to proceed with the fee adoption process, we'll be coming back to you with the results of the fee study. So that'll be another opportunity for council to review this, provide comment, and to hear from the community, from the public. At that time, we'll be asking council to authorize us to proceed with the 218 process and noticing. We go through the noticing period. We come back again to the council again in May for the public hearing, for the protest hearing on the notices, and to authorize staff to proceed with the ballot proceeds. So that would be another vote that would go out to the community, and that would end in June or July, depending on when we get the ballots out. And we'd come back one last final time with the results and to adopt the fee study and to approve the fees. So that's a little bit of the timeline. And we're actually on somewhat of a tight timeline because on the back end of this, if we were to move it to the county tax roll, we have an August 1st deadline. So there's really not a lot of float in the schedule or an opportunity to delay things if we're going to stick to that August 1st deadline. If we miss it, this pushes us back at least a year, and we'd be going back another year. And so that is at least a year minimum of potential lost revenue if the fees aren't adopted. So that just to give you a recap of how we got here and kind of looking forward to what are our next steps. And with that, I'm going to introduce our consultant who's been working on the fee study and the community survey to go over his results. And I'll be back at the end to give us a conclusion. I think, Chris, come on up. Next slide.
Thanks, Andrew. My name's Chris Coulter with SCI Consulting Group. We're the engineer of the fee study associated with this project. So today we're going to go over the survey results and to explain a little bit more detail, we mailed out 4,100 surveys to the community. That's to property owners of properties within the city of Monterey. The purpose of the survey is to test the messaging as well as the community priorities associated with stormwater services. Want to gauge which projects and which issues are most resonant with the community. Also test the community's willingness to pay for these services. And these 4,000 surveys were mailed out in November on November 19th of 2025. We had a 30-day return window there, and the surveys were tabulated and analyzed starting on December 19th. The surveys tested a stormwater fee rate of $772 per month. Annually, that adds up to $92.64 per year. The survey results came in here at the 772 rate, came in at 42.9% support. Now, that 772 rate is the benchmark single-family home rate. These rates are specifically calculated for each property that was each property owner that received a survey received a rate that was specifically tailored to their property. And the majority of the properties received that 772 rate. It's a benchmark rate. Most of the properties are the same size, single-family homes. The margin of error on our survey was 2.93%. That's a really strong margin of error. We had a very high return rate. It was over 20%. So it was just sort of indicates the community was pretty engaged with this survey. And we saw just under 1,000 surveys were returned. And you can see in that white box, I'll just read this here. The main question that's asked on the survey went forward as such. In order to protect properties from flood damage, reduce flooding of streets, and prevent pollution of Monterey Bay and our local creeks and channels, would you support a monthly fee in the amount of $772? They had four choices there to gauge their support level. Definitely yes, probably no, or definitely no. And we'll look at these now in a little bit more detail here. So this graph shows the definitely yes, the probably yes, the probably no, and the definitely no on top in the dark red. So that 42.9% of the yes votes, most of those were probably yes, whereas about a little bit of over half of the yes votes were definitely yes. So you had some strong support. Most of the support was less than the definitely. So that softness of support is typical. It's not abnormal to see that level of softness. We know that the soft support is a little bit more prone to being influenced by the framing of a potential measure. So when you look at those probably no's, as you can see, you had 15% or so, and those folks also are prone to messaging, and we look at those as potential swing voters essentially. So the definitely's are definitely a little bit harder to change. And now to explain a little bit more about what this 42.9 really means, in this type of ballot measure, a 50% threshold is necessary for approval. It's one vote per parcel.
Can I just ask a clarifying question
Yes, please.
regarding the threshold? It's 50% plus one, I'm assuming.
It's actually 50%.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we hope we haven't really seen
we don't
one
have that
actually
there.
land right there on the line, but yes. This survey also included a questionnaire to gauge the projects and issues which folks thought were important. And you can see there the list. The list is sorted by the most supported to the least supported. All of these came in at over 50% support. So when we add up the very importance and the importance, they're all over 50%. The most favored was cleaning drains before a storm. So it's sort of like an operational and maintenance. That was just about 72% that people thought that was really important. The next one was stopping trash and pollution. So environmental concerns and really just maintenance to prevent those streets from flooding were very, very resonant within the community. So we know that that messaging would certainly resonate. Down at the bottom, strengthening infrastructure for extreme weather and using stormwater as a resource came in at less supported, but again, over 50%. And we'll just talk about the findings here, what this really means. So the survey results that we have do not show enough support for a stormwater fee at $772 per month. To give you a little bit more about what that $772 means is that's enough revenue to fully fund the operations and maintenance side of the stormwater system, the stormwater program. And the Measure P and the Measure S sales tax funds help fund the capital side of this equation for the stormwater services program. What we looked at with this 772 rate was the amount that would be necessary to fund O&M. And again,
Say that again. From the 772 would be enough for
O&M.
O&M. Okay. So could you tell the public what O&M is?
yes, operations and maintenance. So that would involve your road crews going out and cleaning the storm drains, routine maintenance of piping, culverts, sort of the routine day-to-day activities of staff to keep the program running.
Could I ask what you stated in a different way to see if I'm understanding correctly? The cost, the budget that we would get out of a 70-72 rate doesn't include capital expenditures.
So yeah, that capital expenditures are paid for mostly by Measure P, Measure S, sales tax funds. The amount, the generated revenue from a $7.72 per month fee would cover just about $1.4 million, which would fully fund the O&M portion of the stormwater services program.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Were you thinking equipment?
Well, what I heard was that just like was rearticulated, that the capital expenditures come out of Measure P, Measure S, mainly, and that the 772 would just be for the O&M. But what I heard was mostly, and so I didn't know if there was any of that funding that would be used for capital expenditures. Just as a talking point, I just wanted to make sure I understood that clearly.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. And, you know, when we have a revenue stream, obviously, the funds that are generated by a fee can be used to pay for O&M, and as well. And when we look at like piping replacement and that kind of thing, routine maintenance does sometimes involve replacement of some pipes, but really these major capital projects that cost millions of dollars, that really requires a different revenue stream. Obviously, Measure P and the sales tax measure ends next year in March of 2027. That's really the big piece that funds all the major projects.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Pick
Please,
off that.
please.
So my concern, and you can repeat that it's not covered in this measure, is our infrastructure isn't keeping up with the climate change and the atmospheric river deluges that we had a few weeks ago. So when you walk around, we need more capital development of our storm system. And I don't think that's covered with PRS. And it sounds like it's not covered with this. So I want to be clear to the public. This is just continuing the management of what we have. It's not really improving the whole system that we've been relying on for, 80 years, 100 years, that needs restructuring or expansion, not repair. I hear that this is going to be repair, but there's so much more that's needed that's new.
Absolutely correct. A lot of the cost of this $1.4 million operational budget is just state mandated and for the city's stormwater permit, the National Pollution Discharge Permit.
Right.
So these costs are really just borne by the city, and these fees would substantially cover a lot of that work that's just required to do the O&M and the regulatory work.
That's helpful. Thank you.
And again, yeah, just to finish off this slide, yes. So we saw flood protection and environmental concerns are primary concerns of the community.
We'll try to let you finish your.
Yeah. I think I'm up to hand it back off to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
So yes, that concludes the presentation on the survey findings. I do want to just kind of bring us back to really this was a presentation as an informational item to the council. We are requesting that you guys authorize us to proceed with the fee adoption process. I guess kind of want to shine light on the survey results. We did not have majority report in the survey. So if we decided to pause, or if council decided not to direct us, and given our tight timeline, that would push us back at least a year. And so we would potentially miss out on the opportunity for a year of 1.2 to 1.4 of revenue for the stormwater program. And there is maybe some consideration to cut services. However, as Chris mentioned, a lot of the operational costs are state mandates. So we will have to provide a lot of the regulatory compliance work, regardless of whether or not this fee is adopted or not. And if we don't have the dedicated stormwater utility fund or the fee for those revenues, that'll have to come out of the general fund for those services. So there is a lot of work on the O&M side, especially in reporting and pre and post storm events, inspections that we do, that we're going to have to continue. So the option to reduce services, we might have a little wiggle room there, but there is a lot of state mandated stuff that we do as part of this program that we'll have to continue to do. Otherwise, we risk potential issues with our permit, notice of violations, which could also come with penalties and fines from the state. So I just want to, I guess, maybe set the stage and give you kind of the importance of the operations and maintenance. With that, that concludes it, and I'll open it up to council for comments and questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Andrew. Open up to questions for the council.
Yeah, Andrew, could you just give a thumbnail sketch so the public can understand when you say regulatory? I get that water resources, lots of things in California to make sure sewage does not go into Monterey Bay. When there is a discharge or when there is an accident, when there is a busted pipe, and we are under the thumb of regulatory agency, what does that mean for us?
So for specifically sewage leaks or sewer leaks, we operate under an MS4 permit, a municipal small agency permit. We have a ton of reporting requirements that also go along with our sewer program. So when there is a leak, there's 4 different categories of leak based on spill response. We monitor and report that to the state differently depending on the size of the leak. And at times annually we'll compile all those spill reports, we'll send it to the state, and sometimes they request that we have additional steps to mitigate leaks moving forward. And so those additional requirements kind of continue to build up in perpetuity. And so these programs only kind of get bigger and bigger over time, but we take action as appropriate. So whenever we do have spills and there are leaks, we respond to it. We'll mitigate the leak, we'll make the repairs, we'll report it to the state, and the state may come back with additional recommendations that we'll have to comply with. Did that answer your question?
You're spot on. Another area, Oak Grove, that's been going under significant undergrounding utilities. Is that one of the areas that is having its sewer lines replaced, or is that a stormwater project?
So Oak Grove, I believe Cal-Am did quite a bit of water main replacement recently. That wasn't us, if I recall correctly. I could follow up with you. I could look into that and follow up with you the more specific detail, but I think a lot of the utility work that's been happening in Oak Grove was Cal-Am, and that was within like last year or so.
Yeah, well, it's still going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have questions? Please, Councilman Garcia.
Thank you, Andrew, for the information. My question was around fines and noncompliance. You've touched on it, answered a little bit of it, but for my own education, can you give me examples of what is noncompliance in this context? Like, what are the things where we would fall out of compliance?
So I'm trying to think of a few different scenarios, but I just know we all kind of fear the NOV letters from the state. There's a laundry list of regulatory compliance. If we're not monitoring or reporting to the state properly, they can send us an NOV letter that usually gives us an opportunity to take corrective actions. If we're non-responsive on that, the state has citation authority and can revoke our permit. I believe citations can be up to about $10,000 per day per violation. So these are things we want to avoid, and definitely having our permit revoked would have other kind of administrative and financial consequences. So I'm not thinking of a specific example off the top of my head of what we could miss, but I'd say if we miss anything on the reporting side or any sort of required action to the state, we do run the risk of a notice of violation.
Just to follow up. So, and these non-compliance items could come up because funding is not available to address them, is what we're saying.
So if funding's not available, I'm going to say staff's going to continue to proceed with our stormwater program, our operations and maintenance, reporting requirements. I think that's just going to come out of the general fund. If for whatever reason the cuts are so deep to services or staff that we were no longer be able to comply with that, then we run the risk. But I think staff will continue to meet the regulatory compliance, and we'll continue to operate this program. It's just without a stormwater utility fee or fund, then those expenses are coming out of the general fund.
Any other questions? Dr. Barber, did you have anything? Okay. So staff handed the presentation, and I was floating through the the ones that haven't been showed yet, what are the backup slides? And I'm just wondering if maybe we could dive into the options more. And this kind of vaguely reminds me of the conversation when we first started this conversation, and I might be mixing up projects. So if I am, please forgive me. But there was this conversation around sea level rise and impacts of that, and including costs associated with the risk of sea level rise and having to move infrastructure. Was that part of this discussion?
So I'm going to go to the slide. We had these in our back pocket just in case you guys had some questions for us. So I believe this is the slide you're talking about. And as we've been developing the fee study, we really did consider a few different alternatives. And really what's been staff's recommendation would be the full cost recovery of the O&M portion of our stormwater program. So there's other scenarios in there. We did consider the potential sunsetting of the Measure PS scenario next year, and then moving some of those capital rehabilitation projects into the fee program. But what's been proposed and recommended and was surveyed was just the full cost recovery of the operations of the program. I'm going to look to Chris to see if you have anything else to add. Okay.
So there wasn't any, do you recall any discussion that we had previously around sea level rise, or is that something separate?
I do recall a discussion around sea level rise, specifically when we were going through our sewer master plan and rate study. There were two scenarios that were proposed to the council, and one included the affordable housing scenario and one didn't. And I think both included considerations for sea level rise in the sewer rates.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because that does ring a bell. And then if I also am stating this correctly, I guess I'll ask it in the form of a question. Didn't we, as Monterey residents, have this charge before, but it was dropped when we transitioned to the tax rules?
That is around the time it dropped. We're going through this process. This is kind of a restart. We've hired a consultant to ensure that when we're doing the rate study, that residents are paying just for the cost of services and they're not paying any additional costs. So it's right sizing the fees to the cost of the services.
So just stated another way, we were paying this before. We've stopped paying it, and we're just trying to right size it by incorporating the charge again so that we can pay for the program.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's not like a new thing that we're coming up. It's not a novel thing. It's just trying to reinstitutionalize and right size the ship.
Yes.
Okay, and then could you speak to, I understand that the city has a program that residents can volunteer to maintain a storm drain. I think it's a really important thing to just share to help kind of maybe support the city in managing its costs associated with the O&M side of it. Could you speak to that a little bit and share how folks can get involved in that?
Sure. I wish I had some of my little flyers available. Adopt a catch basin. So one of our newest hires, Rebecca Baggett, had kind of come up with this program, and you can hop on the city's website and volunteer to adopt a catch basin. And so that delegates a little bit of formalizes a little bit of responsibility to the adjacent property owner or whoever wants to take ownership of it. And so we do have this program. Once you adopt a catch basin, you can be on the city's website and highlight it as the person that's taking this responsibility. And we're doing more outreaches on the way. I think we're making a video to help promote it, and we're talking to some of the business associations. We've had some success so far, some early adopters.
Awesome.
But it is on the city website, and I can email out the link or put it in your Friday folders.
Perfect. And it may be good if we could, and maybe have Lori include that in the e-news blast that we send out. Yeah, please. Go ahead and cut it off in the chamber. I'll do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 2 on Zoom. We'll go ahead and take those callers.
Laura, you can go ahead, please.
Good evening. I just have a quick question, and it may or may not tie into this, but I'm wondering how does, maybe this fee doesn't tie in, the storm drains and stormwater maintenance, how does this tie into City of Monterey getting the local coastal plan certified? Or maybe it doesn't. And if this fee and fund doesn't go to it, do we have a plan for that? Because I know our LCP is, we're hopefully going to get it certified this coming year. So I'm wondering how we're going to pay for that. That's all.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Tom.
Yeah, the 72 fee, $7.72 fee, how does that compare with the fee that we had before the fee was discontinued? I was just a little surprised of the lackluster support, if it's at or below what was the old fee. I honestly don't remember what the fee was prior to it going away. And kind of a follow-on to that is if the 772 is at or below what was being charged, couldn't this just be reinitiated without having to go through the whole Prop 218 process, since it's within the confines of what was previously approved? Thank you.
That was it. Sorry. I thought I saw 3. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council. Staff can maybe answer those questions that came up. There was one about the LCP, the plan if not funded, and then the previous Prop 218.
Yes, Mayor, we do have Ms. Kim Cole in the audience, so I think she can answer the question regarding the LCP.
Good afternoon. There's no direct relationship between the current storm drain pipes for O&M and the LCP. Ultimately, permitting will revert to the City of Monterey once we have a certified local coastal program. We're also working on a sea level rise study. I feel like that's a little bit off topic, but if you want me to update you on that, I'm happy to do that.
I think we can save that for another day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim.
Oh, the other question was, what was the fee before we ended it? Yeah, it wasn't 772. It was.
Good question. And the old fee was $570.
And when was that approved? When was that authorized?
When was it originally authorized? I don't have that off the top
More
of
or
my head.
less, maybe.
Precedes my time with the city. I'd really hate to guess and really misrepresent.
I think contextually that might be helpful, important to the public. And we don't have to maybe answer it today because this will come back to us again. But I think it's helpful just to kind of look at inflationary costs associated with where the fee was once it was authorized. But and then there was the question around plan if not funded. I think you spoke to that a little bit during the presentation, but I know that question came up during public comment.
Sure, and I can maybe try to reiterate. Yeah, so if this isn't approved, the plan, we'd still support our stormwater operations just to ensure we're not at risk of a notice of violation with the state or missing any regulatory requirements. So we would still proceed with the O&M portion. It would just have to be financed out of the general fund.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Okay. So back to the council for motion and deliberation.
I think there was a legal question that I wanted to ask.
Please
proceed. So there was a question from one of the callers that wanted to know, well, if we had this under 218 before and we paused it, why do we have to go back and do this like it's new? Because this is a ballot measure to go for an election in November. So maybe you could answer that question for the public.
Sure.
And the other step of that is, based on the action tonight from the council, we would then see a ballot measure language, and then we would be voting on the ballot language before it goes further. So we would have action by the council to execute pushing it forward to a ballot. and we would see a ballot measure language.
I think that was in the schedule for the Prop 218 ballot
Okay.
language to come back to you, and our office would review that before it goes out. There's a lot of technical stuff that has to be in there.
Yeah.
And then in terms of going through a Prop 218 process for this implementation of the fee, it's a requirement of the law because we're adjusting the rates, and it's just a part of what has to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Entertain a motion.
I'm going to make a motion that we,
I don't.
Nope.
There's a motion. It's a
Yeah, there,
paper presentation.
authorize staff to initiate the process for fee adoption.
yeah, do you,
There was a presentation, but then there's that second part.
Thank you.
yeah, so are we ready for a motion? Yeah. Was there other discussion with the council?
Why don't you go ahead and make the motion, and then if there's a discussion, I'll check in with the council.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we direct staff to proceed to prepare a ballot measure to execute the stormwater utility fee. After receiving this report, I think the next action is to push towards for ballot.
Could I check it? Could we just make the motion to authorize staff to initiate the process for fee adoption? I think that way it's nice and clean and in alignment with the language of the agenda item.
They want a fee adoption, but doesn't that require a ballot?
It's part of the process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so for language, we can call it staff proceed for a fee adoption.
Perfect. All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Seconded by Councilman Garcia. Any other discussion on the motion? All right. We'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks again, staff, for that and all the work ahead there. With that, I wanted to share one more thing because this doesn't go on the traditional ballot, and I just kind of wanted to clarify that for the public. This isn't going on like the primary ballot or the November ballot. This will be something that's delivered to all residences to their home. They have to mail in their vote if they so choose. And then we will count those and consider that vote in our decision-making process in front of the council, which that will ultimately lead to either adoption or not. So I just wanted to provide that clarity distinction. All right.
It's a direct vote by each parcel.
That's right.
owner.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 5, update on the budget deficit strategies, chilled or authorized but unfunded positions, and provide direction on whether to place ballot measures on the June 2026 election ballot. With that, I'll pass it to Lou for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As you recall, at your last meeting last week, your council provided direction on proceeding with a number of tax measures for potentially the June 2026 or the November 2026 ballots. And with that direction, there was also some questions regarding those ballot measures and a request for staff to identify additional information, particularly in relation to the parking tax. Staff has evaluated that. What we intend to do this evening is provide some background on the budget deficit, and you may have seen some of this information in prior presentations. The intent is really to show the public of how the city, what were the cost drivers that really drove the budget deficit and will continue to drive it in the years ahead, how we got there, some of the issues related to the current budget, and then finally, an overview of the ballot measures. Our intent tonight is to request respectfully that your council give us clear direction on proceeding with potentially one or more of the ballot measures, as we're very close to the deadline to get these on the June ballot. So with that, Ms. King, your finance director, will give an overview of the background, how we got there. Then we'll turn it over to your assistant city manager to talk about some of the deficit measures. But again, this was not intended to be a budget hearing. We'll come in the coming weeks and give you much more information. You can dive in deeper detail in terms of positions, cost saving measures, and other initiatives that your council has identified over the past months. Thank you.
Good evening, council, mayor. I always love when the city manager steals my thunder and does everything for me. It does. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right into, again, you will see a lot of these in slides that you have seen before. It's for the benefit of the public and a reminder to you. So really, how did we get here? We started with the general fund. She now has a structural deficit in in 25, 26 in this fiscal year, which means that the current year's revenue is not enough to cover the current year's expenses. And this has been ongoing. It's an ongoing issue as long as the growth in expenses outpaces the growth in revenue. So, but the 25, 26 was balanced with one-time solutions. For 26, 27, we have very preliminary numbers because we haven't really started the budget process yet. But we are based on our 5-year projections that we show when we adopted the 25, 26, that we have, it'll be again over $10 million. We are looking at 112 million in expenses, in revenue, and over 124 million in revenues. Again, as long as we don't do anything or enough, that number will continue to grow. So, and recognizing that this is an issue, council and staff, we started discussions early. We started in June, July, and August of last year to determine ways to reduce the ongoing deficit, the balance the 26, 27 budget for by increasing the revenues and decreasing expenses. So some of the contributing factors that led up to the structural deficit, I'm going to start with just this one example. So this is just the difference between fiscal year 24, 25 and fiscal year 25 and 26. So that increase from the adopted budgets for each year is 11.6 million. So 5.9 of that is related to salary and benefits, is based into regular salary increases of 3 million, overtime 1 million, retirement costs 400,000, unfunded accrued liability 1.2 million. Talk more about that a little bit in a couple more slides, and OPEB also 300,000. We had 2.7 in service and operations, service and supplies, which is your operations and maintenance. Then 3 million in internal service charges, which is made up of technology, 2.3 million, insurance premiums going up, 500,000, and vehicle replacement at 200,000. So the rising costs. So the MOU agreements, as you know, we put in place in 2024. We came to agreements with all 7 of the labor negotiations at 4% each for each year for those 3 years. Those wages for the 25-26 year is about $6 million of the general fund for increase over the prior year. And combined with the city's previous agreements for FY 22 and 23, that equates to a little more than a 25% increase over the 5-year period. Compensation study we also did in 2024, which was to bring staff into market, which helps with the retention and make sure that we have our staff that are paid within the market for their areas of employment. The wage adjustments that related to that exercise is about 1.4 million. The other thing to keep in mind is the increase in FTEs and RPTs, the full-time employees. So since 2021, there's been a steady increase in the number of authorized FTEs. In 2021, the number of FTEs was under 420. In 2024, when the labor contracts were signed with the 4% increase, there was 450. So all the contracts were based on 450 FTEs. So since that time, at 25, 26, fiscal year, that FTE numbers has grown to 485. So the delta of those 38 positions from signing the contracts to the current fiscal year also contributes to the rise in salaries and benefits. Then we get to insurance premiums. So workers' compensation insurance since 2020, and keep in mind with the insurance, workers' comp and property and the liability insurance, those are based on, headcounts, personnel, payroll costs. So workers' comp insurance from 2020, it's gone up 30% from 511,000 to 511,000 from 395,000. It's approximately 80% of liability. The liability insurance and also workers' comp is paid for out of the general fund. The liability insurance since 2020 has gone up nearly 400% to 3.3 million a year, from 850,000 in 2020 up to 3.3 million. And unfortunately, with the way that the insurance is going now, the industry, we can expect to have that rate continue to increase for the next several years at about a rate of about 10% per year. And believe it or not, we are in a JPA, so which means that our rates are still the most competitive that we can get. Moving on to retirement costs and benefits, our unfunded actuarial accrued liability. In 2021, those numbers have steadily, they rise every year. In 2026, we projected about $17.6 million that we needed to pay. 13.6 of it is in general fund, which is a 23% increase from above the 2025 and 75% increase since 2021. Our other OPEB, other post employment benefits, 2026 for this year, 1.7 million, of which that 101.4 million is funded by the general fund, 24% increase above FY25 and 55% increase since 2020. CalPERS contributions, those I don't have the numbers there, but those have also increased. They increase every year with our contributions. That amount goes up as well. Another thing is our debt service. Our debt service for our fire trucks and engines that we've purchased. So we've purchased since 2020, we purchased 3 fire trucks and engines. The total price for the 3 is 3.4 million that we paid or we financed. So the debt service has risen. So I put this chart in here to show you how that's the amount that's going out the door every year rises. So from FY 2020, $1,800. 55,000 in 2021, and you'll see in 2024, 383,000, 2025, 26 and 27, you'll see as well over 600,000 that goes out the door every year. That's comes out of the general fund. That's an increase in rising costs. So as a reminder, here's our 5-year forecast that we presented when we adopted the budget, showing that, and again, these are straight operations. This does not include any carryovers from the year before. So this is the revenues for that we're projecting each year and expenditures for each year. And then the transfers in and out. Transfers in and out will include things like this is where your transfers out will be the debt service that goes out. Normally, in this particular scenario, we didn't include CIP. CIP would normally be in that area too, and transfers out about 2.5 million, which is not included. So just kind of wanted to show you these kind of numbers. The bottom line is where you're looking at 10.5 for 2026 deficit, 8.4, 5.0. Or 5 million the next year's. And these are moderate. We have moderate growth in salaries in these. So basically in 2027 is our last year, the 4%, and 28 and 29 on this point out there's 0% increase. And for 29 and 30 and 31 is 2% each year. So again, these are moderate numbers and moderate growth numbers. So nothing has been negotiated, of course, because it's not that time, but just showing that there is a lot of room for adjusting and tightening belts. So our structural deficit for 2025, this is just show you what we did to balance the budget. We talked about this before. We didn't fund certain positions. They're still on the list, but we didn't fund them. So that took about $2.8 million out. Also reducing the O&M, we talked to, well, all the departments took a 7% cut this fiscal year to help balance the budget. And then we restructured and reduced financial commitments from general fund and kind of moved them other ways, and which included decreasing amounts that we would have taken from salary savings and put into our reserves. So things like that are included in that number. for the 26-27 projected. Again, this scenario includes continued savings with the frozen or the unfunded positions. And again, we have not even discussed any of this, so just telling you what these numbers are looking like. So by continuing to doing what we're doing, this is no CIP coming from the general fund, and this is very limited increases in accounts for other than salaries and benefits. So when we start actually working on the budget, which starts in February and March, those numbers are going to change. We're expecting them to probably go up. We'll be doing some magic in the back room, trying to make some stuff happen, but we'll bring it back as the budget primer in April. So here's one of our backroom tricks that we want you to kind of look at. So we took the same scenario for the 5-year forecast and put in there if council decided to put the ballot measure 3.75%, 0.375 sales tax on measure. So what I did here is I took the revenue line and increased it by 3 million for the 26-27, 4.5 million for 28 moving forward. It also assumes that Measure G is renewed because it comes up for renewal. It also includes that that's still here. And you'll see that the numbers are looking better. But again, it's looking better. We're doing some magic. We're trying to work some things out. But it also still keep in mind there's still very moderate growth, and we have to go to negotiations for salaries. There's still things that still needs to get done. There's still CIP that needs to get done. There's still other things that has to happen. So this is just a very, very rough draft, preliminary, but you can tell that the sales tax measure will benefit as we move forward. So a quick overview of the authorized and unfunded positions. So to balance the 25-26 budget, we didn't fund about 14 vacant positions. And since that budget was adopted, the staff has increased the total number of positions to 20, and the value is about 2.8 million. So we did, to remain flexible, we've talked about this before, to remain flexible enough to satisfy keep the service needs. And we took those positions in order to be able to fill whatever is needed during the time and replace them as we could. So on a monthly basis since July, the city manager's office, finance, and HR, we've met on a monthly basis since the adoption to go over the budget for the positions and look at what's new, what's coming up, if there's been some unexpected people leaving or coming in, and how we can services needed in different areas and how we can shift that around. So that's been done, and just kind of towing the line to make sure that that 2.8 million that we projected and used to balance the budget still remain the same while keeping services going. Again, you'll have more detail, more in-depth report at a later council meeting in a few weeks. So the unassigned fund balance, carryover, Ed, so you know, so the unassigned fund balance is the carryover, and that amount is the amount of budgeted funds that were unspent at the end of each fiscal year. So salary savings from unfilled positions are the largest contributor to that account or to that amount. With vacancies that range anywhere between 40 and 60 positions each year, the amount actually varies each year. So we utilize about a 3 to 4% range of budgeted positions each year to balance the budget. And the unassigned balance, the carryover amount is estimated each year and is trued up at mid-year. And then at mid-year is when we get our audited financial statements. At that point, we know exactly what the number is that was available to be carried over. So that's the number when we take that. And so with that, our contributions to reserve accounts, they're not included in those calculations. I know some people thought that they were, but they're not included in the operations deficit that we talked about earlier. It doesn't determine the amount of the structural deficit. And so the budget amounts are only contributed to the reserve accounts after the audited financial statements confirm what that unspent dollar is, and then that's when we move the money into those reserve accounts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nat so he can talk about moving forward with deficit reduction strategies.
Mayor, could we ask questions of her on the financials
I
first?
think so. I think it might, maybe breaking it up per
Yeah.
speaker would be helpful.
Yeah. May I start with?
Yeah,
a
please.
question? Thank you very much. It's very helpful and I appreciate it. Can we go to the slide that says overview of authorized and unfunded? Probably, there we go. So combining the two first bullet points,
Mhm.
it says staff did not fund 14 vacant positions for that budget year. And then since the adopted budget, then you are calculating an additional 20,
No.
Total 20.
Total.
total of 20. Okay, total of 20. And the total of 20 is the value of 2.8
Savings.
in savings.
It's actually going to be a little bit more. Because sometimes some of the positions that we froze, let's just say, I'm just throwing random positions out. So let's just say it was an administrative assistant that was actually frozen. And then we had a higher price position, say a manager level position. At that point, the manager level, and we decide, well, we're not going to fill, they're here for 4 months, 5 months. We're not going to fill this for another several months, or we're not going to fill it this year. And we can move that position over into the list. So now it would go from 14 to 15. And then whatever the difference between what's already spent for the fiscal year, that remaining of it could go in there and increase that 2.8.
Okay, and is that what you call salary savings?
No,
No, I know in the accounting terms, no, it wouldn't be.
no, this is, what word do I want to use? This is creative, making sure that we can stay flexible with the positions that we have, because we didn't just freeze positions. So, but we did have, these positions are still on the PCL list. So someone can still, we still have council approval to fill these positions. We didn't fund them, however, but we also know that we will have salary savings because, like I said, those 40 to 50 positions or 40, 60 positions that are throughout the city, we know that there's still money there that we use. That's the salary savings. So this part, since we never funded, there's no salary savings that's moving forward because we use this 2.8 to close the gap.
Okay. So I guess it's a terminology because part of the staff report includes a figure that's talking about the unfilled, they're funded but unfilled.
Yeah, that would be.
And that was 65. And I know it changes, but it's talking about as of December 31st, the city had 65 unfilled positions and 2 unfilled part-time positions.
So those unfilled positions is what would be salary savings at the end of the year.
Okay. So I'm leading up towards understanding your chart that was later talking about the deficit number in June 30. And then it moved from 10 and change down to 5. And in order to get there, that was in part from the salary savings,
Yes,
if we did not fill the positions.
right.
Okay. And then that was not counting, and you had it on the sidebar, pending a passage of a ballot, pending NCIP, money coming in. Okay. That's good. I just wanted to cover that in my head, so I'm in the same terms that you are. Thanks.
Robert, did you want to jump in? You're good? Any questions on this side? Please, Jean.
That was very helpful. On the liability insurance increases, they've increased by nearly 400% to 3.3 million from 850,000 in 2020. Is that the aggregate pool that we're in with other cities?
Yes.
Okay.
I would keep in mind too, when you're looking at when we started with 2020, also keep in mind that insurance, most of our insurance are also based on labor and our payroll costs. In 2020, because it was COVID, our number of positions and people, payroll went down. So you'll see that that increase is going to be higher too as well from 2020. So if we started at 2021, it wouldn't be 400%, but it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be 300%. So the increase in insurance has it's steadily going up.
Okay. That's not,
Not good,
but not quite as dramatic given the COVID numbers of employee numbers.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then, the reserves. Are we projecting for the 26-27 budget? Are we presuming that we're including the $6 million allocation to reserves?
I'm very hopeful that we're going to do that.
So when we look at the proposed deficit, that's incorporating that $6 million in.
No, what I would be incorporating in that is, let's say at the end of this fiscal year, we didn't spend as much money as we budgeted, and we came in with 40 positions that were not filled. So we have salary savings from there and salary savings from, we didn't buy enough widgets. So we have those savings there. So combining that may come up to 7 million. So if that comes up to 7 million, then the 6 million that we have in our policies to fund the reserve policies, that's where that comes from. And then I try and make sure that are you?
So it's extra money. It's not going to be in your draft. I presume you're going to give us a draft budget for 26-27.
Yeah, we haven't started the process yet.
Yeah.
I mean, so we always do the primer in April. So yes, it will be there.
But you're able to project, the projection is that we're going to be off by 10 million. So that's compared to last year, or your projections for next year, or your projections for next year.
We are looking at if I'm just looking
You're
at the
on
5-year
15.
forecast, so I'm looking at it's going to be 8 to 10. Well, actually, no, right now we're looking at our very, very rough draft of revenues that we're looking at is going to be 112, and then rough draft of expenses for next year is 124. But again, we have not started out with the departments. We don't have, because we usually don't start until February is when we work with the departments and they start giving us their numbers for expenses and what they have to run the operations in their department. So we really start in February to start collecting the data. March is when we start massaging the data and we put it together and say, what is the gap? So we know what the gap is in March. And then that's when we start working with the departments to make sure that we can try to close that gap as much as possible.
Right. And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so the picture in my brain is right. I'm still a little confused about the commitment, the hoped for commitment to the general reserves of 6 million. Is that in that $124 million
No.
general fund budget?
No, it's not included in that.
Okay. And so that's why you said if we have any unspent.
And we
money,
will, we always have,
we
yes,
can put
that's
that toward-
exactly. And that's why when we tried to close the gap we did close the gap for this fiscal year 25-26, we were able to look at, and we reduced the amount that we were putting into the reserves for both 25-26 and 24-25 in order to say we don't have enough money to put in what our policy is and what we want. So that's where we went to 50% of each, except for the economic uncertainty, which we have at 20%. That we fully funded. The rest of them, we took 50%. And that's why, to make sure that we still have money to move forward and close the funding gap for this fiscal year and move forward.
Okay, great. Very clear. Thank you.
Can I make a comment on the reserve piece? And it might be helpful to understand that councils have always had a policy direction to staff and finance to establish the reserve accounts by policy. So because it's a council policy, I think what she's saying is she has to go through the whole budget process before she can come to us and say, to comply with the policy that is our policy, she has to have the true up number and the actual numbers. And then she would make a recommendation on the reserve accounts. And then that would come together with the budget based on what council direction would be to execute the policy on reserves to determine whether it's 50% or it's whole.
Exactly.
And then that's kind of the last piece to make the budget make sense. based on what the council would recommend, that we modify the policy, or we see the picture looks good enough to keep going 100% for the reserves.
Thank you, Rafaela, for the information. On one of the first slides, the item that jumped out at me was the figure for overtime, $1 million. I'm curious if there is some analysis, periodic analysis, if there is at all, if not, if it would be helpful, and if conversations are happening around the positions that are being frozen, right? And the savings, the salary savings related to that in comparison to the amount of overtime that we're seeing. Like, are we really saving by freezing those positions if we're seeing a figure of $1 million in overtime?
I think that for the positions where the overtime is really significant, those are positions that are not frozen or not on the unfunded. So we did not touch any of the sworn positions, sworn police officers, sworn firefighters, and also the engineers. So we didn't touch those. Those are still fully funded. So an overtime increase of $1 million is not coming from other departments.
So thank you for providing this slide, and I'm hoping that maybe we could go over it a little bit more, because I think particularly for the council, when we're communicating with the public in regards to where did this come from, I think it's helpful for us to be able to digest and understand this a little bit better. And so as I look at this, I'm trying to see kind of big picture, what's different than what we've done in the past and the projections in which we started the fiscal year to where now, not now, but in the fall, we came out with $10 million, budget, structural budget deficit. So just to kind of look at this as an example, the salary increase, we knew the salary increase was going to happen. We had already approved the MOUs. So I don't understand how that led to a surprise.
So move to the next page. Again, go to the one where it says increase in FTEs and RPTs. When I say that we actually, when we signed those contracts and negotiated those contracts, it was with 450 at total FTEs. So since then, we've added an additional 38 positions. So we fund those 38 positions. So that's a huge delta of positions. And therefore, what we projected in 2024 to be, this is the number and this is the 4% and what it looks like going down the line. We didn't project or didn't account for 38 new positions on top of that. So that's part of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. And then do we have a dollar figure for that, those 38, 40, 30?
No, sir, because they didn't all come at one time.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, how many employees did we have before COVID hit? And it's fine if you don't.
There is a slide in the back pocket somewhere way down yonder. It's got that graph for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Back here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the slide. It's not on the slide. Nope. Here we go. One moment.
Great.
Is that in the packet that we have here that was printed out for us?
It's not in the packet, no.
It's been in a different package, but
This was shown in October, but we can print it out and share it with you.
Okay, so it's roughly where we're at we're back where we were.
Pretty cool.
much.
Okay.
Could we go back to the difference between 24, 25 and 25, 26,
Mhm.
please? So the next one, and I'm just kind of going through this because I'm trying to understand. So the next one is overtime.
Mhm.
So again, that was something that was before. So what's changed in that category that's led to?
So that I can't tell you. What I can do, I don't have it now, but we run every month, we run an OT report. So we know where the overtime is, which departments are accumulating overtime. I can get that report for you, but I don't have that dollar amount. So it could be whatever is going on in particular departments where it might be the fires, the floods, and whatever that is that will contribute to that.
But the number that we're seeing on this slide for overtime $1 million, that's not saying there's been an increase in overtime $1 million. That's total overtime that we're seeing.
This is just, no. This is just the increase from 2025 to 2026. That's
Okay.
the increase.
Okay. Yeah, it might be helpful to kind of see overtime over the past few fiscal years, just to kind of see, is there a trend there that's occurring and in particular from what departments?
I can do that.
And on the overtime, the other question is, some of it's reimbursement if it's deployments for fire.
Yeah, what's coming out of our general
Yeah,
fund for it?
what, and we have.
And I can, when I show that, I can give it to you, get that number to you the next time, and I can also net it against the revenues
Yeah,
that
I
are
think
coming
that'd
against
be
it.
to know the net.
Okay.
And then retirement costs. Okay. I mean, some of this might be helpful to kind of just see some trends in regards to, is this normal or is it, what I'm trying to identify is where are the outliers that led to beginning of fiscal year, no $10 million deficit, and then a few months later, $10 million budget deficit. And I don't need to go through all of these, but I think it's helpful. And maybe we don't have exact numbers like.
So let me just say this.
Mm.
The deficit each year is not new. It getting to 10 million is new. So that's when I'm ringing the bell. But every year, because we had salary statements. So maybe this year, and I pulled a report, well, not a report, but went through all the 5-year forecast since I've been here, since 2021, and kind of looked at the different and how the numbers have changed. And so for every year, or every time we did a budget, it was always getting into projected a deficit every year. So, but it was smaller, it's small, it gets a little bit larger. And then since we have the salary savings and we're not spending everything that we budget, we still sleep at night. But when they get to $10 million, I'm like, I'm not sleeping anymore. So I'm here. It's like, we have to start really looking at this and doing something about it. So,
I think what you just said is exactly the piece that I'm trying to figure out that's not clear to me.
Okay.
When we started the fiscal year, we didn't have a $10 million budget up, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. So whatever it was, $1 million, $2 million, whatever, somewhere on there. But then all of a sudden, I don't know when we started this discussion, in November, maybe, it came 10 million. So I'm just trying to, and I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm just trying to understand like how this appeared all of a sudden. And if we can have something that breaks down specifically, not based off of maybe normal ups and downs of things, but what has significantly changed that led us to 10 million is a big number. And I think the why is important towards some of the solutions that we use towards addressing the deficit.
Understood.
So I won't belabor the point, but I think having a slide kind of spelling some of this out a little bit clearer will be helpful for the council and the public. There was another slide. The unfunded, I think it was the unassigned fund balance. I know you said that the amount can vary, but when I'm looking at the simple math, so we have the 10.5 million deficit for this year. If you take away the 2.8 that we expect to get from not the salary savings, but the vacant positions, which might go up, but for now, let's just say 2.8. So that brings us to 8.7. And then let's take the 3 to 4 million that NCIP is considering, which a little bit.
So wait, let me help you.
Yep.
So for 25, 26, this fiscal year, we balance that budget. So when we balance, this is just the things that we use to balance this budget. We had a commitment of 4 million to do the loan for one of the projects. We also had, we took half of the reserves, which was for 2 years, we took half. So that's 5 million there, and then 4 million there. That's 9. That takes that 10 down to 9. And then we had some other, the 2.8. So we am
I don't know what that was some magic. that was.
I'm good, Tyler. I'm good.
That wasn't coming through osmosis. So.
She's doing it off of a deficit.
I can see it. I saw it.
She's working off a deficit.
I believe you, actually. So let's just go with it.
Okay, so let's just say with 25, 26, we did our one-time solutions, and therefore we don't have the 10 million for this. So we knew there were going to be deficits moving forward. Next year for 26, 27, just preliminary numbers show there's 8.4. And so we've been looking at 10 million has been stuck.
8.4? Sorry.
Deficit. So.
Because you have the frozen positions.
So when we take away the frozen positions, that's kind of where I was getting to.
Mm-hmm.
So that delta between 10.5 and 8.4 is the frozen positions? How did we?
It's the 20 positions you identified, isn't
it? Yes, this one takes those positions out. They actually freeze them for that 8. For that 8, it actually freezes those positions and completely takes them out. These are the assumptions. We're not expecting these assumptions to stay true. This is just preliminary. We're looking at moving forward and how do we reduce that deficit moving forward. And again, this is just straight operations. This is just straight revenue coming in, straight expenses and transfers in and out. What does that look like from a year to year? This does not take into consideration any savings from the prior year. Now, we will have savings from the prior year, but this is just bare bones. It's like, so if we, let's just say, if this was 0 all the way across, then that means that whatever savings that we had the previous year really is savings. It's not used to fund next year. So that's what we've been doing, taking them, whatever we had savings from last year, using it to close the gap and fund next year. So that's what we've been doing. And then having those positions that we're not filling or can't fill, we fund them anyway. So they're part of that number for expenditures. Because so if that number is there, let's just say you've got 7 million, you've got $10 million worth of positions that are included in this expenditures, which drives your deficit because we have to fund them until you tell us not to.
And I'm going to jump off of this because we could go into the weeds and maybe we can have a deeper conversation offline. I had one more question in regards to the 5-year forecast for 25, 26 and through 30, 31. Does the deficit that we see in a prior year, does that carry over into the following year? Or
not on this chart.
Okay, so we're assuming that that's just purely
this is just 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. That's it.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for it.
You sure, Tyler? You got
For now. Yes, please.
I want to highlight something that we all kind of got there. I think at this moment on the topic of funded and unfilled positions, whether it's 62 and we also had an increase of 38 since post-COVID, to me, that's the lion's share of our problem. We should get to a point where we don't have so many positions that we're funding, that we're not filling. We need to true up the actual size of the organization. This is laborious for staff, it's laborious for finance, And it's not really an accurate way to reflect what your organization is capable of in its delivery of services execution for 365 days. To me, that's the heart of the matter, is to get to the recommended number that we truly know what we're funding each year. So we're not playing the kabuki game where we save 5 or 6 million and we save ourselves July 1 with salary savings every year.
Mhm.
I think at some point we need to get there. That number of full-time employees is everything about the budget, because it impacts your workers' comp, your benefits, and our future salary negotiations, and our capacity to be treating our employees fairly in their compensation. We have to have the true number of our full-time staff. And then, of course, the part-time staff too.
I agree.
So I think that really is something we have to get back to.
This is something that Hans has talked to me about ever since I've been with the city. And it's like every year we see the projected numbers and it never ends up being what the projection was. We end up with a surplus, and it's
Right.
like, how did we get this far removed from what we projected? And so how do we fine tune this a little bit? And I think you're hitting the nail on the head in regards to the positions. I think the one thing that we have to be careful of is my assumption is a lot of the positions that we're freezing right now probably shouldn't be frozen long term. So how do we right size that in a way to make sure that we're fully operational so that we're not unduly impacting the rest of our workforce?
Yeah, and that's
duties
the city manager's assignment, that they have to align the work plan with the capacity of the personnel we have to identify the places that are essential, that have to be filled, the critical positions that must be filled, and those that we have to say, we're not going to fill that positions because we haven't filled it in 4 years.
Right.
So we've got to ask ourselves, well, we haven't filled it for 4 years. What have we not been able to deliver?
Yeah. And
So
part of
that position needs to be identified.
Right. And part of that conversation is on the table that we're going to have with all the department heads as well, so that everyone has an opportunity to weigh in on their operations for their departments and take a realistic look at those positions that are vacant. I'm not talking about anything that's filled, but the positions that are vacant, where services are not being touched because you're already doing a certain level of services at that point. So
Yeah, and they're in a position to do that.
I'm going to pass it to Dr. Barber, and then we're going to move on with the presentation so we can get through this.
One quick question. Thank you for the presentation. Not to belabor it, but as you go back and pull out for next time some of the meat from the difference between FY 24-25 and FY 25-26, I'd like to lean in a little bit more to the 2.7 million in the services and supplies to see, is that something that's being kind of tracked and seeing the difference and seeing if there's an outlier there, or what's going on there with almost 3 million with services and supplies increase? I'm just curious about that part.
I will
Just for next time. I know you're gonna be pulling out some other pieces like the overtime, but if you could pull out that piece too, I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Can I just say in regards to that the 2.7 from one year to the next, when it's citywide, is not that significant when you're looking at a $200 million budget. It's not. And the reason I say that is because most of the departments are running really lean. Like this past year, we dropped, made everybody kind of give us 7% of their budget. And the year before, we kind of scrolled through everything, every line by line for every department, every division, and looked at the trends between one year and another. It's like if you had $50,000 budgeted last year on this line and you only spent 20 and you asked for 50 again, and we looked back like 3 or 4 years and that was the trend, we reduced that. So we've been scrubbing for the last few years but I will definitely get you that information.
And I appreciate that context of understanding the scrubbing that you guys have been doing, but I guess that's even more reason why I want to know how did we get the 2.7 million increase from 24, 25 and 20 to
Okay.
25, 26.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Please continue, staff. Thanks for indulging the council there.
Thank you, Rafaela. And the next part of the presentation will focus on the deficit reduction strategies, and in particular, the items that are more urgent for council to discuss and decide tonight. And those are the items for the June 2026 ballot. Council discussed this last week, and we're continuing that today. Just as a recap, and we won't go through each of these items, but we started to present to all of you the index card exercise list of 24 deficit reduction strategies starting in August of last year. And council made some decisions about reappropriating NCIP dollars, looking into first responder fee, other types of direct revenue generating strategies, some that are ongoing, some that are one time. But what we'd like to focus on today and tonight is on the card 13, the additional sales tax, 14, the admissions tax, 15, we talked a little bit about last week, the vacancy tax, 16, the parking tax as core items. And what we've done is we've put together a table here, and we'll go through this in a little bit more detail that highlights the sales tax, parking tax, admissions, vacant home tax, renewing Measure P and S and Measure G, the revenue options A, B, and C are the ones council could potentially discuss for the June ballot. Vacant homes, renewing Measure P and S, as well as Measure G. Also not listed here, a potential ballot measure to have a public safety facility bond measure. That those items we can discuss as we look into the November 2026 and beyond ballot measure timeframes. We want to do just really quickly and just very, very briefly. I know there are some questions about parking tax. So before we go into depth here, some questions from last week on parking tax about how do we, what are some of the options and what are other cities nearby or in California that have a parking tax? So we wanted to make sure we shared this with you. When you look at comparator agencies in the Bay Area, South San Francisco is the lowest at 8%. Berkeley, Santa Cruz, each at 10%. Oakland at 20%, San Francisco at 25%, Santa Monica at 18%. Parking tax is not a tax that is widespread throughout California, but is targeted towards tourist areas and high visitor areas. And that's what we have before you here. We have an estimate here in this table that shows the various tax rates as council discussed. The feedback from the public on polling shows that there isn't an appetite to go beyond 10%. And I don't think there's an appetite with this council to move forward beyond 10%. With a estimate of 60% occupancy based on the number of private parking lots to a range of 85% occupancy, you can see where the revenue would land based on the various tax rates. What staff would recommend if council is interested in moving forward with the parking tax is an 8% rate. That would be in line with the lowest end of the parking tax rates in those comparator cities and bring in anywhere between $447,000 to $633,000 per year. We wanted to bring this forward and share this with you based on questions from last week on Tuesday. Again, this gives us a review of the tax measures, and we're going to leave this slide up for all of you to see. Again, options A, B, C, D, E, and F. We heard loud and clear from council wanting to move forward with the 0.375 cent sales tax with a 9-year sunset for this June. And still to be decided is whether we're moving forward with the parking tax in June, potentially admissions tax, and then the other three tax measures that we're planning on discussing as well. So council is aware of the timeline. We do need to move fairly quickly, which is why this is on tonight's agenda. The ballot measure timeline is that we are looking for your direction to return with the fiscal emergency declaration on any of the proposed measures, so that we can place that on the June 2nd, 2026 ballot. What we would do as early as next week, February 6th, is send the draft sales tax measure to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration for review and approval. This is the state agency that regulates sales tax, CDTFA. At the February 17th meeting, so 2 weeks from Tuesday, we would ask council to adopt a resolution by unanimous vote of the council to declare a fiscal emergency. And this is required for us to put the sales tax measure on the June ballot. And then hopefully on February 17th as well, we would adopt a resolution calling an election to ask voters to approve the sales tax measure, request that the county consolidate with the established election that is scheduled for June 2nd. The absolute last meeting, this resolution would come before council would be on March 3rd, but we are hoping for February 17th in case there are some changes. March 3rd is cutting it fairly close. There are some other steps as part of this process. March 7th through the 12th is the period to file the primary ballot arguments in 300 words or less. And then there's, of course, a maximum of 5 authors per argument. March 12th, last day for city attorney to file impartial analysis of the ballot measure showing the effect of the measure on existing law and operation of the law in 500 words or less. And then March 19th, the last day for rebuttal arguments. Thank you, Chrissy, for putting this ballot measure timeline together for us tonight. We are looking for council direction on, again, sales tax, which we received feedback on last week, parking tax, emissions tax, and others. Open to the floor for discussion. If you have questions, we're here to answer any that you might have.
Okay, so we're a little tight on time. We're actually already 40 minutes over. So let's be diligent here in our questions and comments. Let's leave this part reserved specifically for questions. So are there any questions at this point?
Question on the slide for the parking tax. If you could go back to that, you had a percentage table. What does the tax rate have to do with this? You've got 2 percentages for South San Francisco. It's 8%. What's the tax rate of 5% mean?
We're providing you with a range. So
separate.
these are just separate. So the tax rates are if we were here at the city of Monterey to implement.
If we adopted.
If we adopt, I'm sorry, to clarify, yes, these are.
Got it.
You got it.
Got it.
Any other questions? All right, let's open it up for public comment. For folks on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. Thank you, Nat, for the presentation. And then for anybody in the chamber wishes to speak on this item. All right, not seeing any takers in the chamber. So I will do a countdown for folks on Zoom to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what? There's nobody on Zoom. All right, we'll bring it back to the council. Let's try.
Let's go through the order.
Yeah. Let's start with the parking since that we were just talking about that. And I think that's probably the one that needs the most discussion. Staff is proposing 8%. Just doing a quick check-in with the council. Is the council okay with moving forward with that?
Just go back to the chart. That would be helpful.
I rather wonder why we don't go to 10.
Go to 9, split the baby? The reason why I say 9 is because it gets us to at least the 500,000. So, and maybe it doesn't have that 2-digit thing that is a sticker shock to some folks.
I could do 9.
Can I interrupt, please?
You can absolutely.
Um,
And you're not interrupting. You are engaging.
well, let me engage. I'm a little confused. We're talking numbers already of, what percentage, when the report came back with 44% yes, 44% no, and the threshold we need is 50% plus 1. So it looks like it would be unsuccessful. So that seems like a lot of time and effort and money that's spent on something that looks like the actual ballot would be unsuccessful. So I'm confused why that's not the conversation as opposed to what percentage are we going to?
I'll speak for myself. I mean, I'm going to be running for re-election this year. And when I'm going out talking to voters, I'm going to tell them why I think it's a compelling story to support the measure. And having those conversations has an impact in regards to how people feel about it. So this was polling, it's a shot of a measure in time. There is the margin of error. And so it's possible that this can pass. It's possible that it's not. Even if it was above 50%, it's a possibility that it doesn't pass. So we see that happen. And I think that the opportunity that it creates for the city to generate that additional revenue year over year is worth risking the potential loss. So anyway, that's my thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah, and I concur with the thoughts, and I know the 44% sounds scary low. But that's before an education, that's before articles, before a ballot argument for and against. And it's something that a lot of cities do when people travel. It's kind of normal. Santa Cruz has it at 10%. Why we're as big, if not bigger than Santa Cruz, and draw more people with more parking. So I think that these are projections that I think are low on 60% lot full if we were at 8 or 9%. Because just think of the impact days that we have in the summer where we see standing bumper to bumper cars down foam, down Cannery Road, trying to get into parking lots. So I think it's a lost opportunity not to it. And the other thing is, if we did have it on the ballot and say it garnered 49%, we might come back and do it a second time. Measure X through Tamsi took 5 times to pass. And each time it got better and better and better. But if this failed, I think the second time
We'll have
there would be, we'd have a barometer, we'd have education, and we would have a prevailing tax. So I think it's worth taking the chance at a low polling number because of the margin of error pre-education.
Okay, and I appreciate my colleagues being able to help me to understand that part, because I wanted to have that conversation first. But for me, if that's the case, because this was something I wasn't for anyway, so just to be transparent. But if that's the case, I would look more at a 8, what the staff is recommending, more so than 10 and 12. And, you know, that's just where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And I would be comfortable with staff recommendation.
Okay. Can we call it 8? Are we good with that? Okay. So I'm going to try to make a motion here to try to get us to move forward. I'm going to offer a suggestion. I know that we talked about at the last council meeting, the consideration to have staff look at admissions tax. It was the 0.375. It was basically A, B, and C. Oh, can you go back to that slide, please?
Are we going to take a motion on each one of these separate?
I'm just going to try a motion and let's see how this works. So what we did at the last council meeting, just to refresh people's memory or make them aware, the council basically gave staff direction to look at moving forward with A, B, and C. So the 0.375% sales tax, the parking tax, and the admissions tax. I have some concerns with moving forward with the emissions tax at this time, and I think it's going to be helpful for us to continue that discussion. So I would hold off on that at this time, and I would propose that we move forward with the 0.375% sales tax for 9 years and the parking tax at 8%. So that's my motion.
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion on the motion?
And the parking tax would be forever.
That's correct. There's no sunset on the parking tax as currently proposed? Okay, yeah.
Right. And I think the limit should be 2 anyway.
Oh, on the ballot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's another reason. Absolutely. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion?
No.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes unanimously.
May I ask council, is there any other language that's necessary to initiate? Is that all you need?
So I know we want to, staff's got direction because of our polling before, but on the admissions tax, I think you said it. I think we should still keep it alive. Let's continue to study it, just not for June, but we'd be looking at a November possibility.
Absolutely. Thanks for helping to reaffirm that. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Anticlimactic.